Good morning and welcome to the second Sunday of Lent. What a wonderful time. Today we are going to learn how we can use the power of imagination during this Lenten season to help encourage and transform our lives. But for those of you that may not have attended last week or maybe didn't get the idea or the familiarity of what Lenten is that time of period that we have fasting and abstinence in Christian churches traditionally, but it's specifically the 40 days between Ash Wednesday and Easter Sunday. And like spring, Lent is a time of rebirth. It's a time for spiritual transformation. You know, we fast from the negative thoughts and negative ideas that do not serve us so that we can be reborn in the Christ consciousness. In other words, we let things go, the thoughts and ideas, so that we can realign with our Christ consciousness through prayer and meditation and quiet reflection. Metaphysically speaking, the Lenten journey, which is more of a unity way, yes, we release our old way by using the power of elimination and step into a new expanded life. Just like a caterpillar transforms from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Raise your hand if you know what the 12 powers are. Okay, most of us here do. The 12 powers is something that one of our co-founders, Charles Fillmore, helped to kind of put into perspective. It's the faculties like faith and love, wisdom, elimination, and imagination. But as I said, we're going to specifically talk about one power today, and that's the power of imagination. It happens to be my personal favorite, so I'm excited and was excited when I opened up the Daily Word and when I opened up the Lent book and saw imagination, something I love so much. It's an awesome power, isn't it, that we have? You know, Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, I'm going to ask you if you'd bring my bag up to me, if you don't mind. Thank you. Our co-founder, he was really all about the 12 powers. He thought that the faculties of faith, wisdom, thank you so much, were so important. I'd like to share with you what he says in his book. It was so important to him that he wrote a book on it. You know, it was just, our powers are incredible. And here's what he says about imagination. We look upon imaginary things as trivial, yet we know that through the imagination, we can produce wonderful changes in our body. And isn't this true? We can create wonderful changes in our body. There is a little book that you can receive. And I believe there's no charge for it. All you have to do is write to Silent Unity. It's called Be Ye Transformed. And each year they put out an Advent book and a Lenten book at Unity Village. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful book. It allows you each day to find a theme that you can focus on, meditate on, as you're going through this 40-day journey. Now, 12 of the days, which is so interesting, of the 40, which is just about a third of the days, are the 12 powers, one each day. Today being, of course, imagination. So why is this that they would include the 12 powers in the 40 days? Well, I would like for you to consider that they include them to realign ourselves with our own Christ consciousness throughout this 40-day season. You see, we need our powers to be in tip-top shape as we're transforming, as we're finding that Christ consciousness and reaching that level of Jesus that we search for. So we have to be powered up. So I'd like you to kind of compare your Lenten journey to maybe that of a automobile. A journey in your automobile. You know, you need an engine for it to propel, yes? So that's like strength. You need an exhaust for elimination, right? Just like we need elimination in our lives. You need a good alignment to stay on your path. Otherwise, you'll drive off the road. Just like we have judgment and wisdom, the powers. And you need imagination, along with powers like will and faith and all those, because without imagination, how can you imagine you're going to go anywhere, right? But just imagine, forgive the pun, that perhaps your engine didn't start. Or maybe your exhaust was clogged. Maybe your alignment was broken. Your untuned automobile will likely ruin your journey, won't it? Yes, you see? Just like your untuned powers along this Lenten journey will not allow you a safe and forward journey into your Christ consciousness. So it is critical for us to do a little maintenance along the way with our 12 powers during this Lenten season. Sounds easy, doesn't it? Just take care of your 12 powers. Just keep everything in shape. But as we know, just like a tune-up, it requires experience. It's not always cheap, and it sometimes takes a lot of time. That's why they give us 40 days in the Lenten season to recharge, to use our powers, to use our imagination. Now, I would like for you to think about Joseph. Who here knows about the story of Joseph in the Bible? Yeah, the son of Israel. Originally Isaac. He had 12 or 11 brothers. There were 12 brothers total. And you might remember this story. It's one of my favorites. He was really into his imagination. And if we look on Truth Unity website, we find out that he was his father's favorite. And metaphysically, when you're a favorite of anything, of any human entity, it's usually because the imagination is uncontrolled. It's undisciplined, and it's kind of like a child. You know how a child just kind of has their imagination run wild, right? In the early part of Joseph's life, he symbolizes this type of expression of imagination. But that imagination can do what else? As a child, it can cause mischief, right? Getting off track. We've all seen that before, right? And little kids, when their imagination just goes crazy. And it's so fun to watch until they go a little bit off track. And then we have to see where they are at that point. Early in his life, Joseph read that his brothers, in his dreams and in his imagination, were going to come lower than him. Even his parents. He, as a younger child, imagined that he was greater than everyone. Do you see? He was in that childless state. As a matter of fact, he told many people about this. And what happens when we are in a not great Christ consciousness stage of imagination and we're telling things? We've all done that before, right? Where we told something that was in our imagination and maybe it didn't bring our best and highest good in the end. I've done it hundreds of times. Trust me. So I want to remind you, just because you imagine it doesn't mean you have to share it. Okay? The symbolism of Joseph shows us that the activity of imagination, when we are not yet mature yet, is a lack of psychological insight or spiritual understanding. But we are told that Joseph eventually matures and begins to learn and develop his insight. Now, it's important in this whole process to understand that Joseph in this story steps in and out of symbolism, okay? He's not always that, because his ego is taking over sometimes, and then his Christ consciousness is taking over sometimes. But as he learns and becomes deeper and deeper at death, soon he no longer symbolizes this uncontrolled imagination and instead progresses to a higher state of consciousness, which is exactly what we're hoping to do in this Lenten season. He reaches his right or constructive thinking, your mind being grounded in the greatness of that Christ consciousness. He really never ever reaches his state. Jesus was the first one to reach that Christ consciousness state that we identify. Now, his father loved him more, as I said earlier, so he did what for him? Do you remember what he made him? A coat of many colors. He made him a coat of many colors. Now, I want to remind you that his father was doing this because his father was in a childlike, symbolic state of enjoying this beautiful dreaming. And he saw something greater in Joseph because he was able to imagine so many things. So he makes him this garment, but what ultimately happens to that garment? It gets stripped. Yeah. The garment gets taken away from Joseph. So symbolically, we see that as him losing his imagination, which we in today's world would call that depression, because we don't see things with color. Everything seems bland. We see things with a sense nature instead of our true Christ nature. But we know that ultimately, Joseph became second in charge of Pharaoh's land in Egypt. Ultimately, he brought his own family back. So what he had imagined along the way ultimately came true, and it saved his own family from starvation. You see, experiencing many tune-ups along the way was exactly what Joseph had. Many, but he hung on to his gift of imagination just like we can. Can you imagine yourself in his shoes? Maybe you've been in his shoes. Have you had to go through a few tune-ups like me, right along the way? We've lost our coats, our cloaks, as they call it in the Bible, of many colors. I'd like to share with you, I was very blessed yesterday in that I told one of my very dear friends, who is Reverend Dr. Paul Hasselback. I don't know how many of you all know him. Wonderful, wonderful person. And he called me on Thursday and said, I need a microwave installed. I said, okay, why are you calling me? I need help. So he had no idea that I'd installed lots of microwaves before. So I went over and I said, after we were finished, hey, can I talk to you about your book? I said, I'm talking in Lawrence tomorrow. And I said, I would like to be able to share with them information from the author. I said, and I'm just talking about imagination by chance. So I said, can you share with me? And he said, always work imagination from the big mind, the big M, which is your Christ consciousness, not your little m or your ego, your personal consciousness. But he said, I'm going to suggest you go to my book and just share with them the underdeveloped and overdeveloped. Because like Joseph, we too, me too, can become overdeveloped and underdeveloped. I for sure have an overdeveloped imagination. I can dream things up. My mom said as a child, I was envisioning things. I was creating things in my house. I was the one doing crazy things, honestly. An underdeveloped imagination results in people who have little ability to visualize. Do you know someone like that? Maybe who just, they go into a house and they want to remodel it, but they literally cannot see the result of anything in their mind. Visually, it's just dead to them. That's the underdeveloped. And then there's the overdeveloped, like me, who may daydream all the time about things, visualize things, maybe imagine all of the time how things could be better, or how can I make a difference? Maybe you do that. What a great place to be is an overdeveloped imagination. Your chances of going into depression are much less limited if you're continually imagining. And during this process of Lenten is a perfect time for you to do that. I'm originally from Kentucky because I barely made it till the pulpit today. You didn't get to hear my bio, right? So I'll share a little bit with you. I was raised in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was very blessed to have a wonderful, wonderful family, very supportive. But you can imagine what it might be like in 1980 to be a gay man coming out in a city that is very scary, you know? It was a very, very, very tough time back then. And I wanted to fit in so bad, you know? I had a great imagination. I had a story to tell. I had things that I wanted to do. But in fact, who I was did not match where I was. Do you see? So, unfortunately, I had struggles. I had problems. And my mom wanted me to be a forensic pathologist. She wanted me to be a doctor. So, in high school, I decided I would get into health careers. And I would do a vocation. And so I started that, and I really just didn't resonate with me. You know how it is when you get into something and you're just like, oh, I'm just doing this because I have to. And then they had this wonderful thing called HOSA, Health Occupation Students of America. And they had these contests where you could do contests, and I'm a competitive person, so I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to sign up for something. But I didn't want to fold sheets for a hospital bed. You know, I wanted to do something more fun, and they had something called extemporaneous health display. And I thought, now that sounds like something I could do. So I asked my teacher, I said, can I be a part of that? And she said, sure you can. I think you'll be good at that. So I go to the competition, and people come in and they're creating posters. They're using their imagination for artist work. And I thought, well, that's cool, but I think I want to take my construction paper and I want to build something. So I started making a little model. And I won first place. I was so excited. I thought, wow, this feels good to me. This feels good. Something where I can use my imagination. So I went to the state, and I competed against 45 more people, and I built a bigger model. And then I went to San Antonio, Texas, and competed in the national competition. And they said, here you're going to do learners of today, leaders of tomorrow. HOSA is sharing and caring. That's your theme. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all my construction supplies with me and I'm going to build something major. So I took the table and I built a hospital. I built a school. I did a rainbow between them. I took the leftovers of the rainbow and scalloped the table and I created a city. Yes, I won first place. But what I won there was something much bigger. Was the thought that my imagination is powerful, you see. I kept thinking I still wanted to do what Mom wanted me to do, so I didn't pay attention to that. And I went on to school, did my schooling, became an all-state insurance agent, believe it or not, right? 20 years I suppressed all those. You see, I took off my coat of many colors, you all. We do that sometimes because we're not doing it for us. We're doing it because we think we're supposed to, instead of for our divine inheritance and what that guidance is telling us to do. But after 20 years, one day, I went to my mom and I said, I've done what you wanted me to do. I just became Agent of the Year in the state of Kentucky. I surpassed all 240 agents, but I'm done. It's time for me to be who I am. So 3 months later, I sold that business. I moved to Fort Lauderdale, and I started doing weddings and events. And I found out that brides loved my imagination. They loved it, and they were willing to pay me lots of money for it. And that was really awesome. So now I'm getting paid for it, right? So that's the place to be. And then I got the call. I was at church one day and they said, do you see how you're shining? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And they said, you've got the glow. And I said, I glow. I know that. No, they said, you've got the God glow, okay? And you need to see that. So after wearing my coat of many colors for that 12 years, doing weddings, I came into a new coat, the coat of God. You see, I was surrounded and enthralled in this presence. And at that point, I knew it was time to pack up the car and go to Unity Village. I imagined myself there. I imagined myself going through college. And I will tell you, I have had to have a ton of tune-ups along the way. My car was wrecked. It was beat up, worn out. Trust me, I didn't realize till I got here how much imagination would get me here, but it would take the level of God to keep me where I needed to be. You see, when we tap into our own power of imagination, we too align ourselves with the creativity of God. Each one of you here today have the opportunity to imagine all the people living as one. You see, imagine yourself happy and content. Through this Lenten season, each one of you have the opportunity. God has blessed us with something called imagination. We're one of the few things in the world that has that, you know? I think my dog has it a little bit. At least it seems like it. We are blessed with that. Don't let that get away from you. Let this Lenten season remind you to tune up that imagination. Let it remind you to be the Christ, the best Christ that you can be. Because each one of you have that opportunity each and every day. And this season provides you the reminder of that. It provides you the reminder that you can imagine who you want to be. I'll remind you again of the song she sang. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us and the world will live as one. What we need in the world is imagination, for people to imagine us as one. Today I invite you in this Lenten season to not let go. Tune up each and every one of your powers. Grab this book and know that you can imagine the world you want to have in your life. Thank you.